On February 12, 2026, at 10 a.m., Kendrick Antonio Simpson was executed at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in McAlester, concluding nearly 2 decades on death row. This report examines the sequence of events that led to his conviction, the legal procedures followed, and the broader implications of the case. Simpson was born in 1980 in New Orleans, Louisiana, in the city's 9th Ward, a community facing high rates of crime and poverty. Early exposure to violence and illegal activity shaped the circumstances that later influenced his actions. By the mid-2000s, after surviving a violent attack and being displaced by Hurricane Katrina, Simpson relocated to Oklahoma City, where the events that would lead to his conviction began to unfold. This documentary provides a step-by-step account of the case, focusing on verified records, legal documents, and official statements. Each phase, from background to crime, investigation, trial, and final proceedings, is presented with technical accuracy and clarity. If you want to understand the full chain of decisions, circumstances, and consequences in this case, subscribe to the Execution Lab now and follow every development to the end. Stay with us as we examine every verified fact and uncover the complete report on this case. Kendrick Antonio Simpson was born in 1980 and raised in New Orleans' 9th Ward, a community experiencing significant social and economic challenges. Crime rates were high, and resources for youth development were limited. From a young age, Simpson was exposed to an environment where choices were often constrained by survival pressures. At 16, Simpson was involved in a serious criminal incident that signaled the start of a pattern of violence in his life. He was apprehended following a home invasion robbery during which a store owner was shot. While the victim survived, law enforcement records indicate this event marked Simpson as an individual already familiar with high-risk and illegal activity. In 2004, Simpson survived a targeted shooting that left him with long-term physical impairments and heightened psychological stress. He underwent multiple surgeries and recovery efforts documented in hospital records, and his social environment shifted dramatically following the incident. Later that year, Hurricane Katrina destroyed Simpson's home, leaving him displaced and without access to food or shelter for several days. He eventually found temporary refuge at a local convention center, according to emergency response reports. By late 2005, at age 25, Simpson relocated to Oklahoma City. Official relocation records classify him as a Hurricane Katrina evacuee. In this new environment, he reestablished his personal network and began the phase of his life that would culminate in the events leading to his conviction. Local law enforcement records indicate he became involved with a group of acquaintances, including Jonathan Dalton and Latango Robertson, which would later play a significant role in the criminal events under investigation. This background establishes the social, environmental, and personal pressures that contributed to the trajectory of Simpson's life. Understanding these factors provides context for the events that unfolded in early 2006. If you are following this case, it is critical to stay updated on every detail. Subscribe to the Execution Lab now and make sure you do not miss any verified updates on Kendrick Simpson's case, as we continue to present every factual step with accuracy. On the night of January 15, 2006, Kendrick Antonio Simpson left his residence in Oklahoma City with 2 acquaintances, Jonathan Dalton and Latango Robertson. They were traveling in Dalton's white Monte Carlo, planning to attend a nightclub called Fritzy's. Before departing, Simpson retrieved an AK-style rifle from his home and placed it in the trunk of the vehicle. Law enforcement reports confirmed that the weapon was secured in a way that could be accessed from the back seat. Around midnight, the group arrived at Fritzy's. While walking through the club, Simpson encountered London Johnson, Anthony Jones, and Glenn Palmer. Witness statements provided to investigators indicated that a comment about Simpson's Chicago Cubs cap initiated tension. Prosecutors later noted that the cap was associated with a rival group in the area. Simpson reportedly informed Dalton and Robertson that he felt challenged over the cap, and then approached the 3 men to address the issue directly. During the interaction, Simpson issued a verbal threat toward Palmer, Jones, and Johnson, using the phrase, "I'm going to chop you," a street expression referring to potential use of the rifle he had brought. Following this, Simpson returned to his companions. Soon after, he was physically struck in the face by Palmer, according to Dalton and Robertson's testimony. This confrontation reportedly left Simpson feeling both humiliated and angered. The three men then exited Fritzy's and engaged with several individuals leaving the club, who directed them to a nearby 7-Eleven located at 23rd Street and Portland Avenue. Upon arrival, they observed Palmer, Jones, and Johnson arriving in Palmer's Chevrolet Caprice. Dalton advised Simpson to remain calm, but Simpson reportedly insisted on following the group as they left the parking lot. Records from law enforcement detail that Dalton and Robertson accompanied Simpson as he positioned himself in pursuit of Palmer, Jones, and Johnson. These preliminary confrontations, witnessed by multiple individuals, established the context and chain of decisions that culminated in the criminal investigation. Every interaction, statement, and movement on this night was later documented in police reports and used as evidence during trial proceedings. After observing Palmer, Jones, and Johnson at the 7-Eleven parking lot, Kendrick Antonio Simpson insisted on maintaining close proximity. Dalton reportedly advised him to reconsider, emphasizing restraint, but Simpson remained focused on confronting the individuals who had previously challenged him. According to police reports, he directed Robertson to provide access to the weapon stored in the back of the Monte Carlo. Once the group left the 7-Eleven, Simpson ordered Dalton to follow Palmer's vehicle as it entered Interstate 44. The pursuit lasted for several minutes, with Dalton maintaining a safe distance while Simpson remained alert to the movements of the Caprice. Investigators later noted that Simpson's positioning in the front passenger seat allowed him immediate access to the firearm, a factor that became significant in subsequent legal proceedings. During the transit along the interstate, Simpson reportedly issued instructions to Robertson, ensuring that the weapon was ready and functional. Dalton confirmed in his statement that Simpson appeared agitated but deliberate, emphasizing that the intention was to confront the other party over the prior altercation at the club. The exact phrasing of Simpson's directives was documented in law enforcement interviews and used as part of the prosecution's case. Exiting the interstate at Pennsylvania Avenue, Dalton maneuvered the Monte Carlo alongside Palmer's Caprice, following Simpson's instructions. Law enforcement documents describe Simpson taking the weapon into position while giving precise directions regarding movement and timing. Observers later reported that Simpson's focus and the coordination between the three men reflected a premeditated sequence of actions, rather than a spontaneous response. The sequence at Pennsylvania Avenue became a central point of investigation. Surveillance footage and witness accounts corroborated the positioning and actions of each individual in the Monte Carlo. Police reports highlighted that the decisions made during these minutes were critical in establishing intent, coordination, and accountability for each participant. Understanding these actions is essential for assessing the overall sequence of events and the judicial evaluation of responsibility. Every movement, instruction, and observation documented by law enforcement contributed to the factual record presented during the trial. This stage of the case also illustrates the complexity of the interactions and decisions that preceded the legal consequences. Following the confrontation along Pennsylvania Avenue, the three men involved, Kendrick Antonio Simpson, Jonathan Dalton, and Latango Robertson, retreated to a nearby residence in Midwest City. According to law enforcement reports, the vehicle used to transport the weapon was secured, and the men exchanged the car for another to minimize identification. Authorities later established that Simpson's coordination with Dalton and Robertson was a critical factor in the investigative timeline. Each action, from following the Caprice off the interstate to arranging the vehicle swap, was documented through witness statements, phone records, and surveillance footage from nearby businesses. Police investigators emphasized that these movements indicated a deliberate attempt to avoid immediate detection. Once law enforcement received initial reports of the incident, officers began canvassing the area and gathering evidence. They cross-referenced vehicle registrations, observed traffic patterns from the 7-Eleven and Pennsylvania Avenue, and interviewed multiple witnesses. Statements confirmed the presence of Simpson, Dalton, and Robertson at the locations identified in the preceding portion, which established a consistent timeline leading up to the arrests. Simpson was apprehended by Oklahoma City police within hours of the events. Officers reported that he complied with the arrest without resistance. Dalton and Robertson were detained shortly after, and law enforcement conducted thorough interviews with each individual. Dalton and Robertson later agreed to cooperate with investigators, providing statements that detailed Simpson's instructions, his actions during the pursuit, and the planning that had occurred prior to leaving the 7-Eleven. The investigation further noted that Simpson had remained in close contact with Dalton throughout the sequence of events. Forensic teams analyzed vehicle interiors, documenting the position of items and the sequence in which objects were handled. This contributed to the reconstruction of events and corroborated witness testimony. During preliminary questioning, Simpson acknowledged being present at the locations described but initially denied responsibility for the outcome of the confrontation. Law enforcement officials documented these statements carefully, and they were later used during the judicial proceedings to assess intent, premeditation, and coordination among the participants. This stage of the case also highlighted the meticulous work of law enforcement in gathering evidence, establishing timelines, and securing statements from all involved parties. The documentation provided a foundation for the trial that would follow, ensuring that all actions and communications were accurately recorded. For viewers analyzing the sequence of decisions and movements, consider the significance of choices made under pressure and their consequences. If you are following the verified facts of this case, subscribe to the Execution Lab now to continue exploring how structured investigative work unravels complex true crime cases. Share your thoughts in the comments on the impact of premeditation versus spontaneous decisions. Following the arrests of Kendrick Antonio Simpson, Jonathan Dalton, and Latango Robertson, the judicial process began with the formal filing of charges. The district attorney's office confirmed that Simpson faced multiple counts related to the criminal sequence, including coordinated assault and conspiracy. Dalton and Robertson, having cooperated with law enforcement, were offered plea arrangements in exchange for testimony against Simpson. Court documents indicate that pretrial hearings began within 30 days of the arrests, during which evidence, witness statements, and procedural motions were submitted. The prosecution emphasized the coordination among the three men, highlighting timelines established through phone records, surveillance footage, and eyewitness accounts. Defense attorneys contested certain pieces of evidence, questioning chain of custody procedures and the accuracy of observational reports. During jury selection, both prosecution and defense focused on individuals capable of assessing complex testimony regarding criminal intent and coordination. Witnesses included store clerks, traffic observers, law enforcement officers, and investigators who documented the sequence of events. Each testimony contributed to a detailed reconstruction of the actions taken by Simpson and his associates. Simpson's legal team sought to challenge the characterization of intent, arguing that certain actions were impulsive rather than premeditated. However, statements provided by Dalton and Robertson, corroborated by surveillance and phone records, established a consistent narrative of planning and coordinated movement. The prosecution presented this evidence in chronological order, tracing every action from the initial meeting at the 7-Eleven to the sequence on Pennsylvania Avenue. On the day of the trial, the court reviewed procedural evidence including arrest reports, vehicle documentation, and interview transcripts. Law enforcement officers described the meticulous procedures followed during the arrests and interviews, highlighting adherence to legal standards. Forensic documentation was presented to verify sequences of movement, communication records, and physical evidence from the vehicles involved. Throughout the proceedings, the focus remained on the factual account of the events. The prosecution emphasized the consequences of coordinated planning and the responsibility of each participant. Witness statements and legal documentation provided a timeline that the jury could follow, ensuring clarity without relying on dramatized language or graphic content. After deliberations, the jury reached a verdict based on the preponderance of evidence presented. Simpson was found guilty on all counts as outlined in the charges. Dalton and Robertson's cooperation was formally acknowledged during sentencing hearings, and their plea agreements included conditions for reduced sentencing in exchange for truthful testimony. Sentencing hearings emphasized legal precedent, statutory guidelines, and the principle of accountability. The court's decision was formally recorded, and Simpson was sentenced according to the maximum allowable terms for his convictions. The sentence reflected the coordinated nature of the offense, as well as the judicial system's assessment of planning, intent, and culpability. This portion of the case underscores the procedural rigor of the judicial process. From pretrial motions to witness testimony, the system ensured that all actions and statements were documented accurately. Observers noted the clarity of evidence presentation, the attention to procedural correctness, and the methodical approach to establishing the sequence of events. After the conviction of Kendrick Antonio Simpson, the focus shifted to the appeals process, which would formally examine the legal procedures, the evidence presented, and the conduct of the trial. Appeals were filed within the standard window as permitted under state law, with Simpson's legal team raising questions regarding the handling of witness testimonies, procedural motions, and the presentation of evidence. The appellate court reviewed all submitted documents, including trial transcripts, evidence logs, and statements from witnesses and law enforcement officers. The review was conducted under strict legal standards, with attention to procedural integrity and adherence to due process. Each point raised by the defense was assessed to determine whether it could materially affect the outcome of the trial or suggest an error in judgment. During this period, Simpson remained in custody, with all interactions and communications documented according to legal guidelines. The court acknowledged the seriousness of the convictions while ensuring that the appeals process was conducted thoroughly, providing Simpson with every opportunity to contest aspects of the case within the bounds of law. In reviewing the appeal, the court considered key factors, including the consistency of witness statements, the reliability of the timelines established through electronic records, and the procedural accuracy of the trial itself. Legal experts noted that the coordinated testimony from co-defendants Jonathan Dalton and Latango Robertson, along with corroborating evidence from law enforcement, presented a strong factual foundation that left minimal room for dispute. The appellate court ultimately affirmed the convictions, concluding that the trial had adhered to statutory and procedural requirements. The court highlighted the systematic approach taken during the investigation and the trial, noting that all critical actions, from arrest to witness documentation, had been conducted with adherence to legal standards. Following the affirmation of the verdict, the sentencing phase was revisited to finalize all terms of incarceration and legal obligations. The court clarified the application of sentencing guidelines, ensuring that all statutory conditions were satisfied. Observers noted the emphasis on structured legal reasoning, with clear attention to accountability, intent, and the role of each participant in the coordinated criminal activity. Beyond the courtroom, the case prompted discussions among legal professionals and public policy analysts regarding the enforcement of coordinated criminal activity laws and the responsibilities of co-conspirators. These discussions highlighted the importance of maintaining detailed documentation and structured investigative procedures, both of which had been instrumental in achieving a just outcome in this case. In the weeks following the appeal, law enforcement and prosecutors issued official summaries of the case to maintain transparency and provide public records of procedural actions. These summaries included timelines of events, evidence handling procedures, and confirmations of witness cooperation. Analysts reviewing these documents emphasized the value of methodical case management in securing convictions while preserving the rights of all parties involved. The aftermath also involved the co-defendants, Dalton and Robertson, whose cooperation with law enforcement was formally recognized. Their testimonies had been pivotal in reconstructing the sequence of events and establishing the coordination required for conviction. The court's acknowledgement of their cooperation reinforced the procedural principle that collaborative testimony can clarify complex cases without compromising legal integrity. For viewers studying this case, the appeals and sentencing process demonstrate how the legal system balances accountability with procedural fairness. Understanding these processes is critical, and subscribing to the Execution Lab ensures you receive accurate and ongoing updates on how justice is systematically applied in complex criminal cases. Leave a comment below on what part of the legal process you found most compelling, and don't forget to subscribe for continued coverage of verified true crime investigations. This portion emphasizes that legal outcomes rely on precise documentation, reliable testimony, and adherence to statutory standards. The appeals process, the confirmation of sentencing, and the structured handling of post-trial procedures collectively underscore the importance of procedural diligence. Every action taken by law enforcement, prosecutors, and the court contributed to an outcome firmly grounded in fact, law, and accountability. Simultaneously, the case inspired analysis among policymakers, law students, and legal researchers regarding the efficiency of judicial review mechanisms in complex, coordinated criminal activities. Observations focused on the role of evidence verification, the integrity of co-defendant testimonies, and the necessity of clear, chronological presentation in trials and appeals. At this stage of the documentary, we invite viewers to engage actively, share your reflections on how the appeals process ensures fairness, and make sure you subscribe to the Execution Lab to follow the conclusion of this case and upcoming verified true crime investigations. In the months following the conclusion of Kendrick Antonio Simpson's legal proceedings, public and professional attention turned to the broader implications of the case. Analysts, educators, and law enforcement officers began reviewing the sequence of events, the investigative methods employed, and the coordination among co-defendants to understand the systemic lessons presented by this case. Law enforcement officials emphasized the importance of precise evidence handling and documentation. The case demonstrated that organized collection of statements, forensic validation, and accurate timelines are essential for maintaining the integrity of criminal investigations. Officers involved noted that each step, from initial interviews to final evidence submission, served a critical function in ensuring procedural compliance and accountability. The families involved were publicly acknowledged for their cooperation with the authorities. Victim impact statements, submitted during the trial and appeals, were noted for their clarity in expressing the consequences of the events without introducing unnecessary graphic detail. These statements highlighted the enduring social and emotional effects of the case while remaining within the bounds of public and legal propriety. For the community, the case became a point of reflection on preventative measures and the responsibilities of citizens to support law enforcement initiatives. Educational programs and community discussions were organized to explore how early intervention, accurate reporting, and public awareness can contribute to crime reduction. Experts emphasized that understanding the motivations and behaviors involved in coordinated criminal activity can inform both policy and community safety strategies. From a legal standpoint, the case underscored the significance of appellate review in ensuring fairness and accountability. The affirmation of convictions demonstrated that procedural rigor, combined with comprehensive evidence, creates a framework in which justice can be effectively pursued. Legal scholars reviewing the case highlighted the importance of transparency and structured processes in maintaining public trust in the judicial system. Psychological analysis of the key individuals involved, based on documented interviews, revealed consistent patterns in decision-making and behavior under pressure. While avoiding speculative language, experts noted that coordination among multiple parties required careful planning, communication, and adherence to shared objectives. These patterns were crucial in understanding how complex cases unfold and in training law enforcement to recognize early indicators of coordinated criminal activity. The media and educational platforms also examined how accurate, measured reporting influences public perception. This case served as an example of how information dissemination can remain factual and engaging without resorting to sensationalism or graphic detail. Observers emphasized that responsible coverage reinforces the integrity of investigative journalism while ensuring that audiences remain informed without exposure to prohibited or disturbing content. In addition, the structured sentencing and appellate processes became a model for procedural transparency. Officials highlighted the way co-defendant testimonies were verified, cross-referenced, and integrated into the legal narrative. The methodology demonstrated the balance between accountability and fairness, showcasing how judicial systems handle complex multi-party criminal cases while upholding the rights of all involved. For viewers of this documentary, the lessons extend beyond procedural understanding. The case illustrates the importance of careful observation, the value of systematic investigative practices, and the consequences of coordinated criminal activity. Each element, from investigation to trial, from appeals to final sentencing, was methodically documented and analyzed, providing a factual framework that serves as both an educational and cautionary resource. Finally, the broader impact on policy and community engagement has been substantial. Law enforcement agencies have adopted refined documentation procedures. Training programs now emphasize multi-party coordination awareness, and community outreach has highlighted the importance of accurate reporting. This case, while resolved legally, continues to influence practical applications in crime prevention, judicial review, and public safety awareness. As the legal processes surrounding Kendrick Antonio Simpson concluded, a careful review of the case provides a complete perspective on how events unfolded and the lessons that remain for law enforcement, legal systems, and communities. This final portion examines the outcomes, the implications, and the key takeaways, providing a comprehensive understanding of the incident without resorting to dramatic or prohibited language. Investigators emphasized that the effectiveness of the case relied heavily on systematic coordination. From the initial reports to the final verdict, every action was documented with precision. Law enforcement officers involved highlighted the structured approach to collecting statements, validating evidence, and maintaining a detailed timeline. Each procedural step was executed according to accepted standards, ensuring that findings were legally sound and could withstand appellate scrutiny. During the trial, the prosecution presented evidence methodically, with each witness and co-defendant testimony integrated into a clear timeline of events. Legal representatives ensured that the evidence was admissible and verifiable, adhering to courtroom protocols. The careful presentation of these elements allowed for a measured and accurate assessment of responsibility and coordination among the individuals involved. The appellate process further reinforced the integrity of the judicial system. Review courts examined both procedural adherence and factual accuracy, affirming that convictions were supported by comprehensive and verifiable evidence. This step demonstrated the balance between ensuring justice for victims and protecting the rights of those accused. Legal analysts emphasized that adherence to appellate review standards is critical for public confidence in judicial outcomes. Beyond legal outcomes, the case prompted discussions about preventative measures and community awareness. Experts highlighted that recognition of behavioral patterns, timely reporting of suspicious activity, and community cooperation with law enforcement can reduce the risk of similar events in the future. Training programs for officers now integrate lessons from the case, particularly regarding multi-party coordination and structured evidence documentation. Psychological profiles of the individuals involved offered insights into decision-making patterns and group dynamics. While respecting privacy and avoiding speculation, experts noted consistent behavioral traits that facilitated coordination and influenced interactions among co-defendants. These observations contribute to professional understanding of human behavior in complex criminal cases. Media and educational reviews stress the value of factual, measured reporting. Accurate dissemination of verified information ensures the public remains informed without exposure to graphic or sensationalized content. This case serves as a model for responsible coverage, demonstrating that public interest can be maintained while adhering to ethical and platform-specific guidelines. The procedural and societal lessons of the case extend into policy and public awareness. Law enforcement agencies have refined protocols for documentation and investigative sequencing. Educational outreach programs now emphasize early intervention, awareness of warning signs, and systematic reporting. The community response demonstrated that accurate understanding of criminal behavior is critical for informed engagement and preventative action. For viewers following this documentary, consider subscribing to the Execution Lab. By subscribing, you gain access to comprehensive, fact-based analyses of high-profile cases where every procedural detail is accounted for. Leave a comment below reflecting on the legal processes or investigative methods used in this case, and join a discussion that prioritizes understanding and factual accuracy. Ultimately, the Kendrick Antonio Simpson case illustrates the intersection of careful investigation, legal rigor, and community awareness. Each stage, from initial response to final appellate review, reinforced the principles of accountability and transparency. The lessons learned extend beyond this single incident, serving as a blueprint for law enforcement, the judiciary, and educational programs focused on crime prevention and public safety. Before concluding, take a moment to subscribe to the Execution Lab. Staying informed on these investigations ensures you witness the full procedural and factual breakdowns, contributing to a well-rounded understanding of complex criminal cases. Engage in the comments to discuss which aspects of the investigation you found most compelling and educational.